It was meant to be a night of music, celebration, and unity. But on March 22, 2024, in Moscow, more than just a concert would be shattered. What happened inside Crocus City Hall that night would leave the world stunned, and investigators with more questions than answers. This is the story of an attack that claimed lives, rocked a nation, and ignited a global investigation. The Crocus City Hall is one of Russia's premier concert venues, a place of lights, sound, and packed audiences. On March 22nd, it was filled to capacity. Fans gathered to enjoy the night. Friends, families, music lovers, all excited to share an experience. There was laughter in the halls, music echoing in the corridors, anticipation in every seat. There was no indication that anything would go wrong, but at 9:18 p.m., everything changed. Without warning, the sound of gunfire pierced the concert's soundtrack. In seconds, the atmosphere transformed from joy to terror. People screamed, bodies dropped to the floor. Chaos erupted. Eyewitnesses later described the sounds as rapid, relentless, nearly impossible to distinguish from the noise of the performance. But this was not part of the show. It was real. Within moments, attendees began to scramble for exits. Some crawled under seats. Others tried to help the wounded. Phones lit up with calls for help. Security staff struggled to understand what was happening. The assailants were reported to be masked and armed. They moved with precision, not in panic, but in purpose. They were not indiscriminate. They struck with intent. Some victims were hit where they stood. Others were struck as they tried to escape. At least 140 people were killed, and hundreds more were injured. Paramedics, police, and emergency responders raced to the venue as news of the incident spread. Once the first calls came through, local authorities scrambled multiple units toward Crocus City Hall. Ambulances, fire crews, and police converged on the scene. But the aftermath was staggering. Wounded people lined the streets. Families waited outside, desperate for news. Emergency rooms prepared for mass casualties. It was not just a crime scene. It was a human tragedy. And while the wounded were rushed to hospitals, investigators began combing through what had been left behind. Inside the hall, the bodies told a silent story, one of shock, violence, and confusion, hours after the attack. A message surfaced, a claim of responsibility by a group calling itself ISIS-K. This was the Khorasan province affiliate, a faction associated with extremist online networks. The claim sent shockwaves around the world. Was this an act of terrorism? Did foreign networks coordinate the attack? Or was the claim opportunistic, a cynical attempt to capitalize on chaos? These questions would dominate the investigation. Russian authorities immediately took control of the case. They cordoned off the venue for forensic analysis. Teams cataloged evidence. Witnesses were interviewed. Security footage was seized. But investigators faced extraordinary challenges. Inside the concert hall, crowds had created a chaotic scene. Initial physical evidence had been disturbed by panicked crowds and emergency personnel. Nevertheless, police began identifying ballistic evidence, ingress points, and anything that could indicate how the attackers got in. They found multiple entry points, security camera blind spots, potential lapses in metal detection, conflicting witness statements. Investigators began reconstructing the minutes leading up to the attack. As the investigation expanded, a troubling question emerged. Had there been any warnings? Was the attack preventable? Some intelligence agencies around the world claimed they had detected chatter online about potential attacks. Some raised warnings weeks earlier, but communication gaps, translation delays, and analysis overload meant alerts were never fully escalated. If there were warnings, why wasn't security heightened? This was one of the first major institutional failures investigators sought to understand. Within days, authorities announced the detention of multiple suspects. Some were alleged to have been involved in logistics. Others were believed to be recruits. Statements emerged, suggesting external support. But quickly, the complexity of the case became evident. Investigators were now facing not just a crime scene, but a geopolitical puzzle. As the first round of arrests were made, and media attention grew, one truth became clear. This was not an isolated crime. This attack had global implications. And while investigators continued their pursuit for answers, the world watched, asking the same question. How could something like this happen inside a concert hall, a place meant for music, joy, and unity? The next chapter of investigation would dive deeper into motive, intelligence failures, and the search for accountability. Subscribe Criminal Verse, where every crime hides a story. In Part 1, we witnessed the attack that shook Moscow and alarmed the world. Now, we go deeper into the investigation, motives, global ties, and unanswered questions that still linger. 0 o'clock to 2 o'clock, breaking down the timeline, investigators reconstructed the attack timeline. 9:18 p.m. Music and lights. 9:19 p.m. First gunfire. 9:22, 9:30, confusion, panic. 9:30 to 10 o'clock, emergency response and evacuation begun. Experts in ballistics and crowd movement worked to analyze how the attackers navigated the venue so quickly and effectively. How did they know the layout so well? Were security patrols observed beforehand? These questions hinted at prior surveillance. 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, security lapses. How did they enter? Crocus City Hall had multiple entrances and exits, metal detectors, and security guards. Yet, the attackers bypassed much of the system. Investigators focused on point-of-entry metal detector evasion, possible. Insider knowledge, security camera blind spots. Experts suggested that the perpetrators likely studied the venue long before the attack. This was not random. This was calculated. Why? 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, international intelligence cooperation. After the attack, global intelligence agencies began sharing information. Interpol released alerts. Western intelligence agencies provided assessments. Satellite data, intercepted communications, and battlefield reports from conflict zones were cross-checked. But contradictions emerged. Some said the attack was planned from abroad. Others insisted local networks were responsible. Was there external funding? Was there training involved? International cooperation became a double-edged sword, helpful, yet confusing. 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, motive analysis, terror, or something more. If ISIS-K claimed responsibility, what was their motive? Was it an attempt to destabilize Russia? A broader ideological statement? A reaction to foreign policy? Or simply a bid for global attention? Security analysts suggested that the group may have chosen a soft target intentionally, a civilian venue with high population density, to maximize fear. But not everyone agreed. Some intelligence sources pointed to internal fractures within extremist networks. Could this attack be a rogue operation co-opted by claims after the fact? The answers were still murky. 10 o'clock to 13 o'clock, arrests and judicial proceedings. Russian authorities reported multiple arrests within weeks of the attack. Some suspects were believed to be logisticians, transporters, recruits, local facilitators. But proving direct involvement, especially leadership or orchestration, was difficult. Court proceedings began. Charges were filed. But, as with many terror cases, evidence challenges emerged. Conflicting testimonies, digital encryption destroyed, data jurisdictions clashes. This made trial proceedings slower and more complicated. 13 o'clock to 15:30, intelligence failures and public outrage. The public reaction was intense. Citizens demanded answers. Why wasn't the threat intercepted? Why were warnings ignored? How could a soft target be hit so easily? Families of victims sued authorities. Human rights groups demanded transparency. International governments called for cooperation. The optics were devastating. Investigators were left trying to balance national security, intelligence, sharing, public accountability, geopolitical relations. 1530 to 1730, ongoing mystery. Who was the mastermind? Years of reporting suggested multiple possible leaders, conflicting claims, no single confirmed mastermind. Some analysts posited Foreign trainers, local recruits with external backing, infiltration of extremist cells into civilian life, funding networks disguised as charities. The deeper investigators dug, the more tangled the web became. This was no longer just a concert hall attack. It was a symbol of modern terror challenges. 17:30 to 19 o'clock, global implications. The attack had consequences beyond Russia. Airlines increased security checks. Cultural venues installed new protocols. International forums debated soft target protection. Intelligence agencies revised threat assessments. People around the world were reminded, terrorism can strike anywhere, even places of joy. 19 o'clock to 20 o'clock, closing reflection. The Moscow concert hall attack remains one of the most disturbing events of the decade. A grim reminder of how a single night can alter thousands of lives. The motives are debated. The investigation continues. The questions still outnumber the answers. And as the world seeks to understand what happened in Moscow, one truth remains. No crime story ends with the first answer. It continues in every question left behind. Subscribe Criminal Verse, where every crime hides a story.